Question number 10, Poto Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister for Community and Voluntary Sector, does she believe that community housing providers with programs that include home ownership should be able to be defined as charities based on the definition of charitable purpose within the Charities Act 2005?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, the High Court has found that it is acceptable for charities to operate home ownership models under certain criteria. The Department of Internal Affairs is now working with a small number of registered charities to ensure that they meet the charitable purpose test. If necessary, the Department will advise them on how to reorganise their activities to ensure that they can remain charitable.
Supplementary question, Poto Williams.
Is she aware that Community Housing Aotearoa has said that the government's solution, quote, doesn't resolve the fundamental issue and charities will need to spend more time and money navigating the new regime of tax exemption outside of the Charities Act instead of providing houses?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, what I am aware of is that this is quite a complex situation. This government is completely focused on assisting community housing providers. That is uppermost in our mind. And for that reason, the Department of Internal Affairs is working with what is now a small number, 50 organisations, to assist them in determining how to continue with their work, alongside of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment.
Supplementary question, Poto Williams.
Given that social housing by community service providers is one of the priorities of her government, and Paula Bennett's comments yesterday on TV1 that, quote, that she is more than happy to have another look at the legislation, end quote, why hasn't she started a review of charitable purpose under the Act?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, Cabinet has already agreed to not review the definition of charitable purpose under the Charities Act. However, it may be a surprise to those opposite that each minister has a variety of different legislation in their portfolio. Minister Bennett and I will work together to further the government's purpose of supporting community housing, and Minister Bennett certainly has legislation that she will be able to work on in that regard.
Supplementary question, Poto Williams.
Why doesn't she just work with Paula Bennett so that a charitable trust in Northland can provide homes for people who really need them?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, I can assure the member that I am working with Minister Bennett and that Charity Services within the Department of Internal Affairs is working with Hei Korowai Trust, that in fact they have been working with them for a very long time. We remain completely focused on furthering the work of community housing providers. We will assist them to overcome the barriers that they are facing, because that is a priority for us.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Poto Williams.
Will the Minister advocate for change to the definition of charitable purpose as defined by the Charities Act 2005?
The Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Mr Speaker, had the member been listening, I have answered that already, but I'll repeat for the member that the Cabinet has decided that we will not be reviewing the charitable purpose in the Charities Act. However, that is not the end of the matter. There is currently legislation sitting on the order paper, if the member chooses to have a look at it, that will give other options to organisations for whom their purpose is community housing, and most definitely that will remain our priority.
Question number 11, Matt Ducey.